Respect the voodoo, respect the voodoo, no matter what you do, respect the voodoo. All is a blessing. Come on in, come on in. Welcome to another powerful, powerful rendition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. We have our special guest. We welcome our co-host. Come on in. Yes, thank you, Alafia, beloved. Greetings and salutations, co-host. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be present here again with me for another edition of the Power Lunch, Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. If you could just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. Greetings, Alafia, Aborigani, Kedu. Things happen. And I like to say things happen always for a reason. For it's all just an illusion and a test. Test your superpowers, strengthen your spiritual powers, ignite your empathic and intuitive powers. All is a blessing, all is a blessing.
Come back home to Africa.
Greetings, Blog Talk Radio, area code 845-277-9143. Welcome, Esprit. Greetings, beloved. Kayla Talk, thank you so much. Denise, Augustine for being present. We'll be forward momentarily. Be patient with me. Greetings, Papa Legba, Eshu Alekbuana, Kosi Were, Awo Unlo Uto, Ni Iwo, Ada Afan Bo Osi, Obatala Mi Itani Ebo Onilio Abane Shu. Eshu is the respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He called to scatter, to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May our Ebo reach a room. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Ashe. Divine all blessed greetings and salutations, peace and power. You are now sitting live once again with the Divine Prince, Pan-African Spiritualist, Practitioner, Author, and Advisor, Elagun, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeya, Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that we stand on the shoulders of mighty, mighty ancestors, powerful ancestors, true survivors, but not just survivors, creators, recreators, reshapers, remakers, those who gave birth to that which continues to survive. We live one more day just to survive. We live one more day just to fight. We live one more day just to push our goals and our destiny forward. But indeed, we stand on the shoulders of a great structure, a great foundation of ancestors for which I acknowledge each and every day throughout my day. Of course, from a ritual perspective, we acknowledge our ancestors when we need them. But indeed, at least every 4 days, we acknowledge our ancestors and all the powers that we operate within our great and fabulous and still mysterious tradition. We also acknowledge those powers that rule the day. And so today is a day that we sure up our foundation, that we're square, that we're standing on is in position. We make sure that our direction and the direction for our requests, be it love and relationships, be it health and wellness, be it career and finance, whatever the request might be, we ensure that the direction is clear and purposeful. Sometimes we send up prayers, sometimes we send up requests, and they're too general, they're not clear. We pray for peace, we pray for happiness, but sometimes we need to be specific about that peace, specific about that happiness, and how we wish and seek it to show up in our everyday life. Result oriented work, if you will. We also pay great homage to the powers of nature that fuel and feed fertility and prosperity and the development of crops and produce and all sorts of manna that is accessible to us, not just for our bodies, but also for our souls and our spirits and our ritual work and our cleaning work. So we give knowledge, we give acknowledgement to the powers of nature. Indeed, there is no voodoo without nature. Voodoo is not witchcraft. Voodoo is not magic. Voodoo is indeed nature. And so in this Western world, many of us still live in this industrialized complexity of a lifestyle that many of us are living under, we seek to regain indigenous connection to the earth, to nature. And it's through the powers of nature that we move our personal, but as well as our collective, our village, our family endeavors forward. So we give all praise and thanks to the powers of iron, the powers of the machete, and the powers of the foundation, and the tools and technology that help to move humanity to the next level. But we also give acknowledgement to the powers that govern direction and that ensure that the arrows that are pulled in the bow and tossed forward always magically hit their target, always through whatever complexity, whatever weather, hit their destination. And of course, that crop growth, that ability to plant a seed and watch it develop and watch it grow in its due season, that ability to distinguish between seed and plant and variety and utility and usefulness is just another powerful gift that not only empowers the voodoo and the ritual and the practice and the worship and the traditions and the people of these traditions, but shows up in our career and our education and our love life and in our health and our overall sense of wellness, and of course the furtherment of our purpose, the furtherment of our destiny. So I greet the God that stands up in you. I greet the ancestors that arrive with you when you choose to meet me here in this squared circle, this sacred space, on any given weekday at high noon US Central Standard Time in this beautiful, historic, legendary city of New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm always open to your questions, your comments, your active participation. The beloved Denise Augustine and I are going to talk about Mother Wit momentarily. I'm going to bring her on screen as a co-host, and I invite you to also join me as a co-host. Give me just a moment so I can get my banner information up. You know, things happen, and so rather than complain about it, I just say all is a blessing. Now, of course, the documents that I should have, would normally have here at my leisure in my face um, have vanished on me. So I'm having to pull some things today anew. So just bear with me. Now, that's the link that I just popped into the chat, and it's now also present on the screen that you can utilize to also come in and join us in this discussion of motherwit. This discussion about motherwit it's everything that you would imagine that it would be, and then a little bit more. And then a little bit more. Our beloved Denise Augustine has a gift of always just giving you just a little bit more. And of course, you can also join me on my Blog Talk Radio phone lines at area code 845-277-9143. Please be patient with me. I only have two hands, but I have to unfortunately operate both platforms from separate tabs. So sometimes you might want to remind me in the chat, hey, I'm on the phone line, or at least give me the opportunity to look over and check to see that you've pressed the number one, your hand is raised, and then I'll also bring you into the conversation. And listen, I invite your questions, your comments, your requests. I'm even willing to do your readings live on air. But some of you know me, live on air is a whole nother dynamic to a private personal reading. And spirit speaks. I'm not always in control of what spirit might say, but I welcome you. We're going to talk about motherwit, and as I said, from every place that you can imagine. But please, Marie, thank you so much. And if you can, turn your webcam on. But also, we're going to talk about motherwit from a more universal ATR perspective. When we think about what motherwit is and how motherwit works, it's more than just big mama, grandmama, your guardian, your maternal elder looking out for you and sharing their experience, their recipes, the story of their life. If you're blessed, some of us don't have that connection to mother, father, and of course their grandparents and the subsequent family that goes along with that. I was sharing that earlier with my personal trainer, just how different the dynamics of society are. My personal trainer is a degree younger than I am, a few years younger than I am. So we're able to look at life from uniquely different perspectives in terms of decades, in terms of generations. And it stands out uniquely to me. And I'm sure Denise would agree with me that, there was a time that we had more family gatherings and more block parties and more holiday events where families truly and indeed came together and loved one another and shared on one another and participated in the lives of one another. And that has changed dramatically from decade to decade, particularly from, let's say, my time, the 1960s, until what we look at today. The involvement, for instance, that your neighbor might have in monitoring the behavior of your children while they're out in the street. Once upon a time, that would have been a normal thing for us to accept, for us to embrace and acknowledge that your neighbors, your friends, your cohorts, your community, other Black folk looked out for you to ensure that you didn't stumble, your child didn't stumble, and then bring the law and that energy back to the community. But we went through a crack epidemic, and we went through many other changes socially, politically, structurally in our world, and particularly here in America, where there's an absenteeism, if you will, of not just Big Mama, but Big Papa. Big Mama wants to be young now. Big Mama wants to live her life now, and Big Mama wants to do her thing now. Even the best case of scenarios. And so it's indeed unique now to find not just the roles that we've traditionally grown accustomed to in terms of the dynamics of building family, but then how that translates out into the community. So Mother Wit was more than just, that bank of information that maybe your mama might knew, but also her mothers and the other women who supported her community, her network, and the what we gonna call it, Denise, the archive of information from which Mother Wit is pulled from. Now we're going to accept that there's also a degree of intuitive power that also operates in Mother Wit. My mother's mother, for instance, my grandmother Murdis, somehow knew everything that was going on all the time, and sometimes without leaving the house. Now, of course, she had a phone back then. She didn't have computers and whatnot. She had a phone, and so she might have known who to call or who to gather information from. But somehow she always knew, you couldn't lie to my grandmother. You had to tell the story straight. And there was an intuitive power to her Mother Wit. Denise is a few weeks to a degree younger than me. So I'm gonna allow her to also share her experience, to open the conversation about Mother Wit. And again, I invite you on both the phone lines as well as here live in webcam to come on in and participate in the show. Hold on, Denise, I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Denise, can
Can
you
you
hear?
hear me now?
Yes, come
You
on
can
in.
hear me now.
Greetings. How your mom in now?
Hi, your mom and them. Greetings, honey, and greetings to your audience. This is what happens. Nature, as you age, slows you down, whether you want to slow down or not. I'm a very, very active 68-year-old compared to a lot of 68-year-olds I know. But we tend to live more in the quiet at this age. And since we know that spirit speaks in the silence, we not only seek, but receive more spiritual information, I think, at this age. The other thing is we have to become more conscious of the things and activities around us. Now, one of the reasons that your grandmother could tell a lie when it was being told, and you said you better come to her straight is the whole time a story is being told. If a lie is interjected in that story, it's going to stick out in bright red in an older woman's mind. You're going to go, something in your mind's going to say that just doesn't fit. And so then the questions will come. Well, how is it that this and this and this happened, but this didn't happen? The other way that Mother Wit comes to us is that we have seen it. We have seen so much. And by the time you're my age, you have survived so much. You have escaped so much. Beyonce has a song called You're the Best Thing I Never Had. I can tell you, Miss Denise was in love with a man and wanted this man so bad and went in the park and screamed at God because I couldn't have him. And right now, he is the best thing I never had because I've seen where his life has gone. And so you get to a point where you know that you are absolutely, totally, completely, abundantly, wholly,
Covered.
and forever protected. You have come through so much by this age that you know that you have been protected, even with the things that you have gone through and survived. If you're listening to this, there was protection there for you. Even the worst things, you're supposed to not, that is one point in your life. That is not your whole life. And so from that point, where whatever took place that shouldn't have, or that was not right or was wrong to your spirit, you are forever to glean the lessons from that one experience. You glean every bit of information, and it is also a part of your protection.
Mhm.
It comes to a point where your dreams will become more vivid,
Mhm.
that you'll sit up in the middle of the night and go, okay, what is this? Or if you have a question, if somebody asks me about something, I explained to Ty the other day, uh, I'm not a reader. I don't have the ability. But if you come to me with a problem, I may not be able to answer it right then and there. Spirit doesn't speak to me instantly. But 2 or 3 days later, I'll go, this is what you need to do. The spirit will either bring it through a conversation, or it will make it available to me through some modality, whether it's computer or reading a newspaper or reading a magazine, or it will come in conversation, or something will bring it, but it will be 2 or 3 days later, and I'll call the person back and I'll go, this is what Spirit said, because I'm not going to guess. If I don't know, it is dangerous to guess, especially when it comes to healing. It took me a week to tell a friend of mine what she needed. She may not like what I said, but what she needed to do to get past something. So mother's wit comes, you see, with even with me, who's seen spirits all my life, started seeing spirits as a child. During the time between 17 and 45, I didn't see him. I was moving too quick. If you're moving too quick through this life, then
Mhm.
you're assessing and taking things in what you want in, and you're not open to other spiritual things. You're moving too quickly. I was trying to get to the disco every night so I could get home at 6, so I'd shower and go to bed.
But
But
Denise,
now that I've
let me
slowed
add to
down,
that.
I'm starting to see the spirits again.
But Denise, let me add to that. I think also there's just this sort of flow that you get pushed into, particularly in our culture, where you start having children at whatever age. And then you
Right.
get preoccupied with making sure their needs are met. And
That's
the
right.
spouse or the husband, their needs are met. And
That's
it's an unbalanced weight of responsibility to some degree that is often placed on the women in our culture. And so sometimes their education might be delayed until
that's right.
later in life. The pursuit of their own uh, things that bring them joy and bring them
And pleasure.
happiness,
That's right.
yeah, get delayed to later in life. And so I think your focus shifts from season to season, man or
It
woman.
does.
Your focus shifts, and it should shift, and we should learn and gain. But there's something unique to Mother Wit. And in Yoruba, uh, we have the word Iyami, which is
Mhm.
the mysterious power of women, so to speak. It is often erroneously translated to mean witchcraft, but I like to compare that to, giving birth to a child. That's not witchcraft, that's divine magic. It might be
Right.
magical, it might be life changing, it might be empowered at every level, but it's not witchcraft. Also, there's a sort of a demonization that has been placed on women and mother wit and the power of women, because mother wit is sort of a nicer way, of saying, those old snooty old ladies, those, nosy old grandmas, those, there's other things that get placed on older women, and not just in our culture, but we also see it in West Africa.
Right.
We're still seeing witch hunts on our senior women and on some of our small children in many other regions, of the planet. So the Yoruba called that power Iyami, and it's not just in the older women, but it's in women. It's said to be innate and natural and organic to women.
But it is also in younger women, because when you're raising children in your younger years, you have an innate ability to know when something is not right in that child.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? A change in personality or something. Even in younger women with their children, there's some kind of connection with the spirit of that child that lets you know something has changed. The direction that child is going in is wrong, or even more, their company. There's something about a certain friend that's not right. So even in young women, motherhood is there. It's just more pronounced as you get
Mhm.
older. So
Well, like the energy and the power of Iyami can also be found in men, because men have to pass through a woman, to come into this reality. So it is something that we all have a piece of and have an access to. But we talk about motherhood, we talk about a certain mastery of wisdom and knowledge and access to an archive of information from everything from recipes, how something is cooked, to healing.
healing to
Yeah,
healing. Yeah,
and how to apply healing applications in any given scenario.
yeah.
Those are the things that I remember the most. I was asked a little earlier today, you know, was I unique to voodoo in my family, or was voodoo in my family? And it pulled me back in memory to really the first conversation that I can remember, really from both sides of my family, by the way, were about voodoo. Were
They
about
didn't call it that though. It was unnamed, don't you know?
it was unnamed
Unnamed,
because we
but the
came.
spirit of it was there.
That's right, because we came from a time where it was said, "Those who know don't say, and those who say don't know." So
That's right.
you took great efforts to not say. You took
To
great,
hide it.
yeah, to not sort of
Right.
reveal, the mystery of the tradition. Melissa Warren, I'm gonna get to you in just a moment, beloved. So the first memories that I have are about voodoo, or hoodoo, or conjure, or somebody being fixed. And of course, in both its negative and positive connotations. I had a great aunt on my dad's side that loved to talk about it, loved to promote it. She knew from a very young age that I had the gift. She knew from a very young age that I would become a practitioner. Uh, but as Denise just suggested, she would say, "Oh, that boy gonna be a preacher. That boy gonna be a preacher, 2, 3, 4 years old." But at the same time, she's talking about roots and bark and playing the numbers and hoodooing a man and working, so that she can gain other advantages in life, in society, that she otherwise thought were being blocked or held up from her, if you will, because of the voodoo. My father's family is also the same side of the family that sort of was marked with voodoo, was said to be the family that was involved in, had some dealings with. And so that comes with a degree of taboo. That comes with a degree of energy, associated, that I also had to sort of grow up in. But my earliest childhood memories are of the practice, the tradition, my Aunt Mary being out in her garden. And it seemed to me at that age, she had a fruit tree of every type and endeavor. I don't know what happened in the 70s. There was some kind of virus that came through and killed many peach trees, pear trees.
Orange trees here.
Yeah,
Killed the orange trees. Many of the orange groves died here.
yeah. So I remember a time when just our environment was so much more fruitful and plentiful, and almost everybody's grandmother, big mama, mama, uncle, daddy grew something.
They
Harvey,
grew it. They grew it either to feed.
we can't hear you. You are muted. You are muted.
I said everything they grew had a purpose. It either fed the body or it was for spiritual work, right? But that garden just wasn't put there lackadaisical. It was put there for a reason.
That's right. That's right. And often when my grandmother, my great aunts, my uncles disappeared into the garden, we weren't privy to what they were doing in there. Now, if they were harvesting, if they were, planting, if they were, clearing out an area and they needed your help, you absolutely were sort of welcome to be there. But there were those times when, an uncle and a friend or my grandmother and a neighbor would disappear back into those trees, back into that garden. And that's where the real consulting,
Rituals. That's
rituals,
where rituals take place.
yeah, dealing with the events of life. So
That's right.
some of my other earlier memories of some of my great aunts, hunting, fishing, and I mean hunting bear, coon, of course, rabbit, deer, big game, and then harvesting that and bringing that back to the compound, because my family still, to a great degree, particularly my dad's side, lived in a compound back when I was a child, here in the depths of Mississippi, in the deltas of
You needed a compound for protection.
Mississippi. Yeah, protection from lynching.
That's right, from outside forces. Because and also to hide, because if you look like you were prospering too much, it would draw attention. So compounds were designed for security reasons and to hide what you have and to keep secret so that attention would not be brought to you. You have one too many chicken and somebody else is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and they were a much more humbler generation. All of my grandmother, for instance, on my mother's side, sisters had homes, had land, had property, yet they worked for the white woman, yet they cleaned offices, yet they cleaned, toilets, and when you start accumulating 2 houses, 3 houses, some property, our people weren't broke. Our people weren't poor. Indeed, they probably did not need, to clean Miss Ann's toilet.
No, but it gave the appearance that you were in the caste where you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you went to church, you had a little piece of fur, right? You had a fur stole to throw over your shoulder. No, they were not broke. There's more money buried in Mississippi and mayonnaise jars. I wish I had.
Yes, indeed.
They buried money in the yard. I know they did.
Melissa Worthen says she used to have vivid and revealing dreams a few years ago. Dreams have now disappeared, or her dreams are similar or polar opposite from reality. And she's asking what's happening. And I'm going to respond to her. And again, I appreciate your questions, your comments, your requests, your criticisms. You can either call me at 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143, and press the number 1 on your telephone keypad, and I'll respond to your questions live on air. You can also join us here in the stream with your webcam and be a part of the show. And you could also do as Melissa has done and type your question, comment, or request in the chat, and I'll do my best to see them and respond to them.
Go ahead and answer that. You know what that is, though.
Yeah, first of all, your vividity of dreams. It's a word we have for that. There's a state, and it'll come to me in a moment, in which you are in your dreams and you realize that you're dreaming, you're cognizant or you're conscious, if you will, within your dreams. And we look at that as sort of the most evolved place a person can be in terms of their dreams, when you're dreaming and you're able to address things, move things around, recreate things in your dream. Uh, there's a name for it, and it'll come to me in a moment. But what you're describing is having seasons of vivivity, seasons of illuminated dreams where you're experiencing color, vivid imagery, and probably things that you can remember. And so we always have to look at diet. What are you eating? What are you drinking? I'm not going to ask you a bunch of personal questions, so don't feel like you need to answer any of these questions. Um, have you had children recently? Have you gone through a pregnancy? Things that would indeed affect hormonal balance, chemical balance,
Chemical balance.
by what we're eating. Are you getting enough fluids? Then the next thing I would look at is, what do you do for a living? Is it stress related from work? Are there other areas of interest that your energy is being drawn to that's causing you to not remember? So the ability to bring that back is absolutely available to you. One of my favorite stones to use is a Herkimer diamond. Herkimer diamonds are unique to Herkimer County, New York. I think they found a few of them in other places in the world, but they're particularly unique to Herkimer County, New York. They are multifaceted, meaning that they don't have one point, but they're covered entirely. They're covered entirely with points, and it's shaped sort of like you would expect a faceted diamond to look. I thought I had one in here, and I probably do. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is a Herkimer diamond. So I would get a Herkimer diamond, and you want to meditate with it, pray with it, but keep it in your pillow or under your bed at night. And it can also help you to retain the energy as well as the detail of your dreams and what's happening. Also, you could be going so deep. Again, if you're excessively tired, if you got a lot on your plate, you can go so. Thank you, Kayla. Lucid dreaming is the word I was trying to come up with. You could be going so deep into your dream state that you can't remember, like you're dead, like you're in a coma, like you're unconscious. And often when that is happening, your spirit is now leaving the body.
Right.
So you're traveling, you're doing work.
That's right.
I spent a lot of time for whatever reason, and I know the reason, but I'm not going to get into the details of it. Some of you dream interpreters out there might understand my dreams, but I do a lot of walking in big cities, Chicago, New York, DC. I mean, walking, 50 blocks from the north side to the south side in my dreams. And sometimes I'm carrying, a bag or two, not luggage, not Erica Badu's bag lady, but every now and then I have a bag or two, because I'm somehow in transit. I'm in between places. I'm going from one place to another. Dreams with airports and train stations and bus depots, and there's always this movement, of energy. There was a time during the Persian Gulf Wars, and I might be dating myself just a little bit, that I would dream about flying over the wars in the Middle East. And I was sprinkling this, the best way I can describe it is voodoo dust, this pixie dust on the troops. And some of you might remember, Denise might remember, that many of them came back with various health problems and diseases that they had to fight the government for many years to get health coverage for, to get protection for during the Persian Gulf. And now that I think about it, that sort of just got quieted, just went away. Like you don't even hear any mention hardly of that, anymore. I guess so many other things, including 9/11, have happened to create even bigger distractions. But it's something that I remember in association with dreaming and dreaming activity. Melissa, also beg of you, beloved, to keep a journal. You're not a computer, even though we kind of wired like it, but you've got to keep a journal. Write down what you can remember. If you can, write down what moon cycle we're in. Write down, to some degree, maybe what you ate or what was going on. For my master journalists out there, they understand the more detail you can add to the journal, the better, in terms of seeing patterns, interpreting patterns, and also interpreting your own unique dream language. Each individual has a unique connection to spirit. So dreaming of fish don't mean the same thing for Denise that it means for me.
That's right.
Grandma
She's
used to say,
actually growing spiritual muscle. The fact that the dreams are flipped, she's aware that they're flipped and they don't mean what they used to mean. She is in the process of growing spiritual muscle now because now she's got to think about it. So yeah, the journaling is an excellent idea.
and that's lucidity.
The
That's
path.
Yeah, and that's lucidity. That's that lucid dreaming. That word
Yeah, very
that
powerful.
beloved helped me to to remember lucidity. So keep a journal. And for those of you particularly that say, "Oh, but I don't remember my dreams," and again, it has everything to do with living in this sort of Western technological radio waves, electric waves. We got all kind of stuff going on that can interfere with our ability to sort of recall once we come back from these intra dimensional spaces that our dreams indeed are. Freud figured, not Freud, Einstein figured out through the math that we exist in at least 11 dimensional spaces at one time in order for this reality to be what it is. That's what gives us the ability to go in the past on a dime, or to go into future, on a dime, particularly when the Powerball number is really, really big. Our imaginations open up about what we can do and how we would live and where we would go, as opposed to just existing in the moment. So everything that we dream has a meaning, whether it's flipped or not, whether recall or not. So also check your feelings. When I first wake up and I'm first conscious that I am waking up in the morning, I ask myself, how do you feel? How do you feel? Because often if you don't remember quite the words, the activity, the locations, the colors, the feelings will help some of that to come back to you. Connect to your feelings and then write that down in your dream journal. And over time, you'll see clear patterns, clear messages that are being spoken. I'm also sensing a transition, Melissa Warthen, from sort of one way of I'm going to use the word belief and spirituality and practice into another. There was a time that, I just couldn't hear gospel. I just couldn't hear gospel. I didn't want to hear anything about the church. I couldn't hear a gospel song. That included Christmas songs. There was a time in my youth I couldn't hear Christmas songs. You had to turn that off. You had to shut that off. Because again, that connected to memories, that connected to energy, that connected to an old way of believing that I was transforming from. And so I only wanted to hear drums and percussion and Sufi music and even New Age music, but anything other than that which sort of kept that church loop going on in the hard drive. So sometimes, I wouldn't remember. It felt like I would go weeks sometimes without remembering any dreams or any details of dreams while that new information was being downloaded. And so I strongly encourage the use of the Herkimer diamond to assist in the downloads. Sometimes you'll wake up and you'll have a wealth of information in your head that you will feel you didn't have before, particularly about belief, about God, about reality, about the world we live in. So sometimes our activity, our human activity, can be a block to us recovering that information from our dream state. So be sure that you're well rested. It's something odd about people who nap in the course of the day and how that affects your ability to dream. And you start having these odd dreams, because you took a nap in the middle of the day. And again, my hat and my hat is off, and my heart goes out to parents and people with schedules that seem like a block to having meditative time, peace time, time to take naps, but time to spend with a crystal, time to spend in the green grass and out in the sun, time to connect with nature. And indeed, our rituals, our candle burning and our shrines and all the ritual practices that we do are a reminder to connect with the source of everything, the source of life. To remind us to connect with the moon, to remind us to be aware of the stars. When's the last time you've seen a firefly? Wherever you live in the world, where's the last time you've seen a firefly? At night. Jennifer Anderson asks, what do we think about moonstone and its uses? That's real interesting because underneath here, I wear a moonstone. It's one of the stones that you all never see, that I always have on, and it is personal, so I'm not going to show it. I don't want everyone's energy looking into it. You already can project because I've given you the general location. So I'm not going to show it, but I wear a moonstone underneath this all the time that I never take off. It connects to the Great Mother. It connects to Great Iya. It connects to the Great Iyami. It connects to the power of Oso. Again, these are Yoruba words that speak to motherwit, that speak to the power, the magical, mysterious power of women. I charge it in the moon. I charge it every day with clear water. Whenever I bathe or shower, I absolutely cleanse it because I never take it off. And it's set in silver, which further increases its receptibility to moon energy, to psychic energy, to nurturing energy, to healing energy, to receptive energy. So I'm a strong supporter of moonstone. That's probably one of the oldest stones in terms of years that I've been with stones in general. I have a preference for lapis lazuli. I have a preference for
I have a
moonstone.
preference for lapis too.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a preference for malachite. And moonstone is something that I never take off. It's empowering for any psychic, spiritual, magical endeavor, but it ensures that your frequencies are always in connection with the moon. And of course, that would include the water, because that moon moves the water, moves the oceans on the planet. And it does the same thing within our,
And women, the moon moves our cycle.
yeah.
So this is just how powerful the moon is that uh, it will move our cycle. The other thing that it does is if you have 5 women move into an apartment, they will all start out menstruating at a different time, but within 90 days, their cycle has all been lined up where they all cycle together. And the moon does that.
Hmm. And I would acknowledge that men are also 70% water. I'm not quite sure. I think it's 73% water. And so we too are affected by the movement of the moon, by the movement of the waters that exist within our bodies. So it's indeed in good behavior for all spiritual people to be aware of the moon, to meditate in the moon, to drink moon water, to bathe your crystals, your minerals, your stones, some of your tools, in moon energy, and to not neglect that moon energy. I'm also aware that the moon is always present, whether we can see it or not.
It or not. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's always present and it's always in motion from our perspective. Thank you so much, Melissa Wharton. I'm so glad I was able to assist you in some way. Of course, if I can do more, just reach out to me, beloved. I'm here for you. S. Marie says she would try and call in. Let me look at my phone lines. Yeah, area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. When you're ready with your question, comment, or request, just press the number 1. Beloved S. Marie, and I'll open your mic and bring you into the conversation. Yeah, I like that metamorphosis, Melissa.
Yeah.
Wharton.
Yeah, you're growing spiritual muscle, honey. You're getting your muscle, and you look young. So congratulations, because because you're aware of it, you'll become more and more intuitive as time goes on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you know, grandma, and of course my mother, but it had to come down from grandma first. You know, had these habits, had these things that she would do. You know, spring cleaning, and we would use vinegar to clean certain items and ammonia to clean other items. And you know, as a child, you know, it's just all cleaning to you, and you're not sort of tuned in to, you know, why bluing here and why pine there, and why the different sort of substances. But again,
And a teaspoon of sugar.
yes, indeed.
Clean, clear, not cloudy. Clear ammonia and a teaspoon of sugar will clear out any disturbing spirits and bring in a path for good ones. Yeah.
And 33, Melissa, that's a power number, 33.
Yeah, 3. 3 is the most powerful number whenever any work has been done. I want you to look at the power of 3 in all religions. That 3 is why you're at this point going through that. Look at the Trinity out of the Catholic Church, the 3 witches of Eastwick. Look at the power of 3 in everything. Do you know at Marie Laveau's tomb, there is a number 3 on the ground in front of her tomb? That's a grid. That's the grid in the cemetery where her tomb is on the 3rd grid. I'm telling you, that is why you're at a powerful stage in your life, and you need to learn all you can and use it. Like Divine Prince said, watch your diet. The cleaner the diet, the more stuff that's going to come into you. But yeah, you're growing your spiritual muscle. Spirit whispered in my ear, she's growing our spiritual muscle. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing, baby.
Yeah. And make sure you get in plenty of fruits and vegetables, and that lucid ability in your dreaming will return. That vividness that you are missing will return. Just make sure you're documenting it, because there's always a reason. Even when you're not remembering, there's always a reason. There's always an activity going on, you know, in your dream cycle. So I appreciate that. I appreciate your question. I'm still waiting on the phone lines. I have plenty of listeners, but no one is pressed the number 1 to raise their hand and to participate. I invite you to join us live on camera. We'll be here for a few more moments. Otherwise, we'll keep it moving along. I am working on some new projects, as I always am. Working on some documentary or some movie or some other demonstration to keep up the authentic practice of Louisiana, Mississippi Delta, you know, Black American demonstration of these traditions alive, so that we don't get swallowed up in appropriation and bastardization, commercialization and popularization and all the other activities that indeed go on. We must keep a sacredness, a sanctity about our traditions, lest folks will otherwise harm themselves and indeed each other. So when I think about, my grandmother, and I speak more about my mother's mother than my father's mother. I knew my mother's mother much better. I spent more time with my mother's mother. My father's mother, who at the time of my life was evangelical, sanctified Christian, and came from that branch of my dad's family that was renouncing voodoo, that was trying to run away from any association to hoodoo and Mississippi Delta conjure and all that kind of good thing. So she wasn't very close. Um, of course, you've heard me discuss my dad being a bigamist and possibly a polygamist. So she was never happy with my parents' marriage or relationship. So she was not very close to us. So I did not spend as much time with her. I saw more church demonstration from her, anointing oil, foot washing ceremonies, watch services that lasted all night. And she would come home wrinkled and sweaty, from having prayed and been on the floor and been involved in faith healing, all night. But my grandmother, much like Marie Laveau, was a hairstylist and had her own beauty salon in her basement. She had two chairs and she had a wash chair and she had a waiting area for them to wait in, and often we were allowed to be downstairs, while this was going on, but often we would be upstairs or at least at the top of the stairs within earshot of the conversations that would, take place in the beauty salon. And so I would hear, women's secrets, women's desires, women's
Yes.
things,
Let me
women's
tell you,
desperation.
police detectives have no idea the information that is passed in secret in hairdressers' spaces. There's nothing that women don't know in the community. Now, she may act like she don't know. She may pretend to not be aware, but the information that passes through a hairdresser's chair is more than it passes anywhere else. The who, what, where, and how of that community is down in that hairdresser's space.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And like many of you, my grandmother never used hoodoo, root work, conjure, never used any of those words around us. And it was only after her passing that we discovered, colored powders, roots, resin, incense, and little booklets, that she had used, throughout the years. Even found some green stamps, if you can remember what those are.
Oh yeah. You put them in a book and you get a
Yeah.
gift. If you have enough of them, you collected them. Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. But in the course of growing up there, forgive me, y'all. In the course of growing up there and hearing the experiences of these women, sometimes the secrets and the magic that these women applied when they felt backed in the corner, when they felt in need, when they felt they needed to be empowered, contributed a great deal to my life and who I am today as a practitioner. That knowledge about the garden, sometimes it translates into cooking. And indeed, we have some master chefs in our midst, men that can cook just as well as women that can cook. But it was often in those places like the beauty salon, like the kitchen where the food was being cooked and prepared, where the conversation would leak those truths, those mysteries, about deeper and more mysterious things. I equally spent a great deal at the barbershop. So there's definitely an equivalent environment in which men also shared their truths and their mysteries as they relate to the traditions that we now acknowledge as, sort of hoodoo and conjure and the like. I can even remember a time where there were families of undertakers, particularly here in Louisiana, and that gift, that tradition of undertaking and burial and funerary processes were passed down generationally through men, often men in many families. And often those men were connected, Masons, Shrinery, other orders. Often those women were connected, Eastern Stars. So again, when I think of what mother wit is, first it's something older than ancient Egypt. Even the pharaohs of ancient Egypt had to be blessed by, had to go through certain purification rituals given by their mothers. The Maasai warriors, have their twisted dread ochre, ochre rich dreadlocks, until they reach the age of maturity, which among Maasai is 35, and then their hair is shaved by their mothers. And it's again another ritual process
Ritual.
of our mothers passing down iyami, passing down that ashe, that great magic. But along with that mother wit, which sometimes is told in stories, sometimes it's told in songs, sometimes it's told in rhymes, and other times it's just pure advice when we're old enough to hear that, and to receive that. And so it's something we see really universally throughout indigenous cultures, practices, traditions. So both the fear and the reliance on the power of women, but particularly the mothers. Somewhere it said the prayer of a mother availeth much.
Availeth much.
Giving suggestion again to the power
Yeah.
of not just womanhood, but the great mothers that continue sort of the cycle of life and our relationship to nature alive. So there is no voodoo without nature, and indeed there's no voodoo without community, without relationship to our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, and even in 2021, 2022, we must create and recreate a reality that mirrors our best interests, that mirrors our beliefs. If we're moving away from the church, great. If we're moving away from the mosque, great. If you now have a problem with organized religion and you accept that there might be something else out there for you, great. But among traditional African-based religious systems, let's come together as communities. Let's come together as families.
For the
And
good of all of us.
for the good of all of us. And
Yeah.
let's start by acknowledging our mothers. Let's start by acknowledging our mothers. And our grandmothers. Oh my goodness, our grandmothers today are taking on so many responsibilities that once upon a time they rocked in the chair on the front stoop. They sat, and rest and had leisure, and Denise earlier in the show talked about, being young and youthful for her age. And I believe you were responding to some of the comments that I made about, today we have mothers of a different type, fathers of a different type, who still want to be young at 50, who still want to be young at 60 and 70. And
Right.
indeed, they have a right to be. We live in a different time and space in terms of our awareness of health, our awareness of what we eat and how we live. And so we're living longer.
Right.
They say black don't crack, but we're living longer. We're getting older. Our senior population is indeed growing.
Right.
But when we use our indigenous mind and we look back to where, indeed we came from, the power and the wealth of our knowledge within our elders was guarded, was protected, was nurtured. So I see a time when we can return to that, particularly if things continue sort of on the trajectory in the world that they are right now. You know, there will be another pandemic. I hate to break the news to you. There will be another pandemic. Now, whether it happens in my lifetime or yours, you know, whether it takes another 100 years, there indeed will be another pandemic, and we will have to again learn to live with ourselves, learn to live with
Well,
that.
as long as you can, pandemics have always been uh, on this planet. There's always been uh, a revolt of Mother Nature. But the more you do to Mother Nature, the more she's going to do to you. You treat her wrong, she's going to make you wear a mask for maybe more than a year now. And so, um, yeah, I agree. There's going to be another pandemic. Um, Maybe we'll learn some respect,
Yeah, for
you
ourselves,
know, for
other,
ourselves and for the planet that we live on.
for our
We need to learn some respect.
for our bodies. You
Yeah.
know, we've gained a greater degree of respect, prayerfully so. You know, from this pandemic. And Kayla, yes, beloved, I agree with you. I think it has everything also to do with maturity. I don't agree with younger people. And when I say younger people, maybe 16 and younger, given ready access to marijuana. No more than you would cigarettes or beer for the first time, you know, or introducing your child to wine for the first time. And I know that based on the culture, Denise might speak to Paris. You know, based on the culture, children are introduced to wine at a younger age, depending on where
Yeah.
in the world, you know, you're born. But in terms of development, and particularly for boys, the frontal cortex is not fully developed until 25. And so, in the environment that we're living in, unless we have a greater degree of emphasis on spirit, on mental health, on emotional health, um, I don't think it's good for young people to be consuming a lot of marijuana at all.
Not only that, but the marijuana that of my generation is not the marijuana of this generation. I'm hearing all kind of horror stories about what's being done. Fentanyl being sprayed on it, different ways that it's being manipulated. This is not the pure drug of the 1960s,
Yeah,
where you could smoke a joint, go to work,
yeah,
and have absolute. I'm hearing of addictions for marijuana. Marijuana, I don't remember being addicted. But
yeah.
what has happened to that drug is that it has been weaponized.
Mhm.
It's been weaponized. If you're putting fentanyl on marijuana, that's a weapon. Fentanyl is dangerous and can kill you. And
Yeah.
so I talked to a woman 3 or 4 days ago that told me that her daughter lost her mind on marijuana, and that she was just now coming back to herself for smoking marijuana. I have never heard such things. And so now I know that this is marijuana is not the innocent drug of the 1960s. This is not the same drug. So I guess like seeds that we plant for fruits and vegetables, you have to get non-GMO marijuana and plant your own,
Well,
or grow your own from seeds that have not been manipulated to become dangerous. This is not the same drug.
that's a point I want to make. First, I want to greet my mom. Hey, mom, thank you for being with us, beloved Gary Von Tell Savage. We appreciate you. She says the conversation is very enlightening, Denise. And
Thank
I
you.
wanted to say, Yeah, many of you are into that commercial, what I call that designer weed. You know, that stuff that's grown in these indoor labs, that's produced under very strict and specific, environment and conditions. You have the various types. You have those that are pulling, from the stevia. You have those that are pulling from the indica. You have all this kind of sort of manipulation of nature going on. And I compare it to sugarcane. Sugarcane has a certain degree of health benefits and nutrition to it. If you're chewing natural sugarcane, if you're using natural, unadulterated sugarcane, but then once you get into all that refining, and breaking it down into liquid, into powder, and then, now you've got elevated sugar levels. Now
and added chemicals to it.
yeah, yeah,
Not natural chemicals to it, man-made chemicals to it. It's no longer what nature made it. Once you do that, and therefore it's going to act differently in your body.
that's right. S. Marie, beloved, greetings and welcome to the show. Where are you calling from, by the way?
Hi, everybody. I'm calling from North Carolina.
Oh, greetings from North Carolina. Thank you so much for getting on the phone lines with us on Blog Talk Radio. We certainly do appreciate you.
Okay.
Did you have a question or a
Thank
comment?
you. I appreciate you all too.
Thank you. Did you have a question or a comment?
I just have a comment. I just want to say that I'm thankful and I'm glad that I found you all. I found you and everyone else, because for many years I've been lost in where I fit in as far as my abilities, and I'm glad that I finally feel like I have a home and a place that I fit in here.
Well, I'm grateful, beloved, humbled that you certainly feel that, because that's the space that I'm wanting to provide. So I'm truly humbled and honored by that.
Yeah, I just feel like I connect more to Hoodoo culture and traditions. For years, I've known about herbs and I've been drawn to different herbs and different types of rituals without any prior knowledge. And later on is when I found out it was connected to Hoodoo. So I was really kind of shocked in a way, because I knew so much, but I know so little. So I'm just wondering, is there anything or any literature you could suggest so that I can learn more about where I come from or where I got these abilities to know about these herbs and rituals from without any prior knowledge? It just comes to me naturally.
Okay, now that's a great question, but it's a big one. So let me break it. Let's break it apart a little bit. Well, first, is it anything you can read? And many of my regular listeners and participants know that I always say, read everything. Read everything. It's almost like college. It's almost like getting a doctor's degree. I would read everything. That's my first response. And I learned that from my mother, who's with us in the chat right now. My mother made us read. My mother didn't allow us to make an excuse for why we didn't know something, why we didn't understand something. And even if she could explain it to a degree, she would make us read. She would make us look it up in the dictionary. She would make us look it up in the encyclopedia. So it's also part of sort of who I am and how I'm made up as a teacher. But read everything. So let's be specific. You want to read about botany, herbs, plants, gardening. You want to read about what grows naturally to where you live in North Carolina. I had a beautiful garden in North Carolina once upon a time when me and my mother lived together in Wilmington, almost to Carolina Beach. And I grew what would survive in that sandy coastal region. I also began to use pots at that stage of my development. The bigger the pot, the better, and if you have just a sidewalk, if you have just a front stoop, if you have just a slight backyard, use huge pots, well ventilated pots, get, store-bought dirt, and fertilizer, and then start growing, your product. Now I have a preference for clippings, cuttings, things that are already growing that I can see that I know are already growing, developing, don't have a problem. And I like to root that, grow from that where I can. I'll use seed in the case when I have to. I'll use seed in the case where, you don't have other alternatives. But for the most part, I like to use a plant that's already in development, and then cut a piece of that plant, or break off a piece of that plant down to the root, and then I replant that in my yard. I replant that in my garden, and learn everything you can about those plants. And then, in terms of your spirit journey, I heard you say spirit journey. Maybe not those words, but I heard spirit journey, and then I also heard sort of ancestors and sort of where you come from. So I'm a strong supporter of DNA. And there's some people in the audience who don't agree with DNA. There's some people in the audience who don't agree with vaccinations. But I'm a strong supporter in vaccination, and I'm a strong supporter in DNA. So use your 23andMe, use your Ancestry.com, use your African ancestry. There are many sources now available to us that weren't available 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, to access your DNA and your DNA records. And understand that your DNA results don't change, but they will continue to evolve the more people who contribute to the DNA record. So, for example, my indigenous blood from this side of the world has been more refined on Ancestry.com. So now they're primarily pulling from two regions, Mexico and Brazil. So it's suggesting that my indigenous ancestors from this part of the world come from Mexico, somewhere in the Mexican region, and then we have to understand timing. What was Mexico 2 years ago, before the Louisiana Purchase? When we're looking at Africa, we have to do the same thing. Where were the Yoruba people in 1500 versus 1600 versus 1700 versus 1800 versus where they are today? So we can't get blinded by the sort of political, artificial structures set up right now around certain countries and certain regions. That's where I come in, and that's where I provide that ancestral work in divination. And I have a system that I've worked out to sort of make it easier for the client to find their way to specific regions, specific ethnic groups that you can identify and pull information from. Now, some of these DNA tests, and I use Ancestry.com and 23andMe in particular, can even connect you to living relatives. And that doesn't mean that everybody always reaches out to everyone who shows up in their registry. But indeed, when you do take a DNA test, there is a registry attached to it. And everybody else who you are blood related to within their system, that particular test, their names, their usernames will begin to show up in your registry. So I have living relatives in Ghana. I have living relatives in Nigeria. I have living relatives in Mali still to this day, that I'm able to connect with, communicate with, Facebook friends with, Instagram friends with. I've even met first and second cousins using ancestry tests. My father had a brother I knew nothing about until I found his son using an ancestry test. My mother, who was the only child who was not raised by her dad, has other siblings out there in the world, and we're finding them doing the DNA test. So that's a great place to start. That's a great place to start, and then you can be more specific about regions and ethnicities and ethnic groups. Nigeria alone has over 200 ethnic groups in it today. And so when we think about, again, enslavement and where we were captured and stolen from, it's a much bigger network of communities that were robbed, that were raped, than what we probably can even conceive in our heads. When I think about just the most, important, the most influential tribes that were around during enslavement, the Shamba people from northern Nigeria, Cameroon, the Wolof people, Senegal and parts of Mali, the Abron people from Ivory Coast, what we call Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, parts of Ghana, Burkina Faso, the Fulani people, largely in Nigeria today, but you also find, because they are the largest ethnic group in West Africa, one of the largest, you also find them in Central African Republic, Niger, Mali, Nigeria, Guinea, Cameroon. So we're a much bigger tapestry than Orisha. And so that's why I sort of make my little shady comments about Orisha romance. Some people are just in love with the Orisha. Oshun gonna fix your love life, and Ogu, go help your career, and you have no connection to the Yoruba at all, literally or figuratively. We can gain connection to these lineages, of course, by adapting their language, which is initiation, adapting their language, adapting their practice, learning sort of their traditions. But I have always offered, since I started doing podcasts, that what's available to us, particularly the African Americans, is so much bigger than that. We're so many more people than that. Denise and I, on the last show, talked about Whitney Plantation, which is a well-known historic archive location here in Louisiana, which speaks to the footprint of enslavement in Louisiana. And they pulled a lot of us from the Senegambia
region, the very first ship. In fact, the French, especially here in Louisiana, since we were founded by the French, there is a place in Senegal called St. Louis, Senegal, named after Louis IX, the only sainted king in the French, in the Catholic pantheon. And a lot of us came from that region, the very first ship, and we had the knowledge to grow rice and water. So not only did they bring us from that region, but they brought 2 barrels of rice so that we could plant rice. We had a special knowledge. Rice is not that easy to grow. We had a special knowledge to grow rice in that area. So many of us, when I did my DNA, I had no doubt I was West African. I knew the traditions, and I grew up in a household with women who practiced Catholicism, spiritualism, voodooism. These women were all over the place. Wherever they could get spirit to move, that's what they practiced. So the fact that I came up 57% West African did not shock me. So I fully think people should take a DNA test. It'll give you a start to who you really are. And if you look into your family, there'll be certain things that'll manifest in your life that will say, yeah, that's definitely West African. The fact that we dance in a circle. You ever seen a group of women get in a circle and dance? Yeah, that's an African thing where we dance in a circle. And it's for several reasons we do that. We leave the center of that circle for spirit to come in. We give spirit a place to come in to dance with us. And that's why we dance in a circle. The other reason is I want the pleasure of watching you dance in spirit. Okay. And not only that, in community, I can assess how you feel by the way you dance. I can tell whether you're dancing in troubled spirit or in joyful spirit. And so Watching you dance tell me so much more about you that if you need healing, I can draw the other women to say, I think she's troubled. Maybe it's time for us to help. So that whole dancing in spirit, ring shouts, and leaving a place for spirit to dance is much, I know, West African. So we manifest our ancestry and our bloodlines in many ways that we don't even know. Let me tell you, blood has power and it has memory. That I can tell you.
That's right.
Blood carries memory.
Yeah.
You carry the memory.
We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you.
Hello?
Denise, we can't hear you. I can hear you, beloved S. Marie.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I
Yes.
said blood has memory. It has memory. And so we learn these, we act a certain way, not by accident. We're carrying the memories of our ancestors. Certain things we'll do, certain things we don't do. That dancing in the circle is one of them, a group of women dancing in the circle. So, yeah, I fully believe DNA should be done to give you a beginning of where to start looking.
And S. Marie, S. Marie, as I,
Yes,
you know,
do.
S. Marie,
Yes, I'm here.
as I, began my journey, even before I had my DNA test done, I had certain ways about me, certain habits about me that I just did, just were intuitive, just were natural,
Me too.
only to later find out that they were very specific things that were done among particular ethnic groups, that are done, among some of the voodoo traditions that many of us sort of covered today. So you're definitely on the right journey. Thank you so much for calling in.
I'm just so surprised. I'm just going to say this last thing. I'm just so surprised because, like, I found some things that are beautiful botanica in Louisiana that I get some stuff from, and I felt that I needed protection. And like I said, I was connected to like agrimony and different herbs of protection and loja, and I got these things and I put it together for a bath, but at the time I didn't know why or how I knew. I just heard the whisper. And later on, I figured out why I did those things, why I put on the white headdress. It's just so unusual to me to hear and know, okay, for protection, I needed that. Or for, I'm praying for prosperity, I needed, I got high done. I just didn't know what they were.
Right.
It's something.
Right. And then over time you learn the deities, the powers that we call upon that represent those endeavors that you're seeking. And that knowledge of self only helps you to make that a little bit more specific.
Right.
Because whether you're the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, we all had a piece of it. We all got a bit of it. And it was called something a little different, in low country Gullah Geechee land. It was called something a little different in the DMV, in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. It was called something a little different as it traveled upriver, to Missouri and other places beyond. But it's in all of our mothers, therefore it's in all of our blood, and it still exists in our ancestral memory. So we're in a unique time in history to free ourselves, to repatriate ourselves, from this system that we seem to always be fighting the police in. We seem to be always fighting, the government in, and free our minds. Bob Marley said it, free our minds, and the rest will follow. And so this is the path that I found healing, that I found abundance, that I found prosperity in, that I found wholeness in. And it's why I do this every day. It's to provide a platform for people like you, and Kayla Talk and S. Marie and my mama and many others to sort of choose to bring our unique spiritual energy together for the benefit of the whole, for the benefit of the community. I sort of see this as a house, as a temple space. We all in our various individualized locations, but we all have a window in, a doorway in to this one space where we can come together under this knowledge, under this power, and particularly for the African American. We're often looking outside ourselves for power, when indeed it already exists within us.
It's within.
Yeah, it exists.
It's already within. It's already within. I'm just thankful for your time and your teachings, and I just want to thank you for everything that you do, and I just want you to know I'm really appreciative of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm humbled and honored, truly. And the Goddess Initiative, that could be said for too much of anything, beloved.
Anything.
Too much of
anything.
It's not a good thing.
No. Everything, nothing should be overdone. You could too much food, even too much water. Yeah. Everything has its limits.
Too much water can kill you.
That's right.
We don't think about that, but too much water absolutely can kill you, and
too much food can kill you.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. I do, but in terms of blocking up our dreams, there was a time, particularly my grandparents' generation, where they swore, too much food increased dreams. You had too much ham, or you ate too much turkey, or so it changes from generation to generation. I do embrace that what we eat, how healthy we are, how well we treat our body temple has everything to do with how we dream. But then there's trauma and experience and things that we have blocks to. Shadow work can block up your dreams. Our minds are uniquely crafted to sort of protect us from too much of something, and so some part of that protection sometimes is the not remembering or the denial in the moment. I had to take a really grueling biopsy the other day, a triple biopsy the other day, and I was literally in a trance from beginning to end. I was discussing it with my sister Wapani, and I said, I don't think I said 2 words, through the whole thing. Okay, was primarily all that I was able to say, no matter what was said, no matter what was asked. But I was in a trance to, override the pain, override the discomfort, to sort of override the experience in the moment. And I didn't allow myself until the next day, the following morning, to just sort of sit in the event and just think it over and look at each part of it, in a way that I would not allow myself to do while the procedure was happening. So we have defenses, natural built-in defenses to pain, to conflict, to dis-ease, to discomfort, to things that don't make us feel well, and so our minds have that ability to block out really important stuff, really important events, but not so pleasant to remember, to live through, to think through. And so we often end up calling that shadow work, those dreams, those memories, those visions that we would rather not have, would rather not, sort of do the work for. And I don't know about your mind, but I can just pull stuff out from the 4th grade, the 5th grade, when I was a toddler, and give vivid detail, that my mother or others can, confirm. So we underestimate the power of the mind, the power of Ori, the power of the head, your first Orisha, to really bring the things into our existence, into our reality that we need, that we seek, that we desire, that we focus on, that we say. And that what you say enough, that what you focus enough energy on has to happen.
Has to happen.
It has to happen.
What you put your emotional energy into, and you say, and you continue to focus on, has to happen. Emotion. The universe is an emotional uh, uh, receptacle. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to put emotion uh, in your speech and in your focus. That's why Mother's prayers is so powerful, because of the emotion that goes into her prayers.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we survive, the emotion. Dancing,
Mm-hmm.
singing, all of these things among Africans and African Americans, all of these things are emotional. We don't dance just like robots. We dance with passion and with joy and with thanksgiving, and all of these things the universe is receptive to. And so, uh,
And there's a ritual nature to it, Denise.
ritual nature to it.
No,
That's right.
we do the call and response. We
Yeah,
sing songs with the familiar refrain and,
right.
and the familiar number of beats and rhythms. And
That's right.
after you sung it a certain amount of years, a certain amount of times, it's in your blood, it's in your bones.
Yes, it is.
It's in
Yes, it is.
the muscle memory. So even if you're not fully engaged, you bobbing your head, you nodding, you're feeling the movement of that thing. So when we do the circle shout, when we sing the old hymns and the old spirituals, when we sing the blues and the jazz, and give it that Jill Scott and give it that Erykah Badu like
That's
energy,
right.
we are invoking ritual.
If
And
you go to a white church and hear Amazing Grace, which I won't sing because God never made me a wretch. I've never been a wretch. But if you just listen to, no, I'm not singing that, and I'm not letting my children sing that. I'm not declaring myself something that I'm not. But if you hear what my point is, if you hear hymns being sung uh, in a totally white church, and you bring that same hymn into a Black Baptist, evangelical, spiritual, or sanctified church, that's a totally different hymn. The emphasis on the words in play are different. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so we will take what is given to us, Africanize it to our own rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
and repackage it with our own blood memories and give it back to you. Okay?
And
We'll,
listen,
we'll repackage it.
those old men would stump their feet, and everybody would get into that rhythm. But
That's
even the mother's breath, even the mother's
the unspoken prayer.
even in between the words, even
That unspoken prayer.
in between the beat, you
That's
know, that Iyami, that power of women, that power of the mothers
that's
would leak out. And again, you might not be in the moment, you might not be interested. You can't ignore that kind of energy. You can't
no, you
overlook
can't.
that kind of energy.
No, you can't.
And the hair
They
would
can,
stand up.
they can sing that hymn, but when those old mothers in the church would moan, that's a moaning prayer, the unspoken prayer. That'll send you running.
Mhm.
Because you know that she's got a connection to something more powerful than herself. She's speaking to something more powerful than herself. That's already within herself. Because when God made you, you were fully formed. That means the Spirit of God is in you. This is where your power comes in. Yeah, that's where that mother's wit comes from. Gives you something to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you stay focused on it long enough, the answer to that will come.
And some people say it's in the hands. It's also in the woman's hands or in the mother's hands. And I can again go back in my memory and remember, salves and rubs, particularly if you had a cold or you had a rash or chicken pox or something,
Them healing hands.
always had, some application to be applied. But is it just in the application or is it in the hands of the mother?
No, they know where to touch to heal. They call it Reiki now. Now it's Reiki, where they tap you and they tap you and they tap. We know those points. We know those points instinctively. They now it's called Reiki. Yeah. I always look when I go into a medical office of some kind, like when I went for my vaccination, and there were like 5 or 6 people standing up there, and they say, "Which lady would you like to give you your shot?" Of course, I took the oldest one there, who's been nursing for 100 years. That woman was in and out my arms so quick I didn't know she was there. I went you. She said, "You done?" I said, "You did it," because yeah. I need that experience. I need that mother's wit to touch me. And so that's why I picked that 60-year-old nurse versus that 20-year-old nurse. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And listen to my female clients. If you're not willing to pass the test, the hands test of this woman right here, I won't be taking your request. Every now and then I get really personal, intimate, sometimes even disturbing requests as it relates to women and the needs of women. And so Denise is one of my first go-to elders. If I have a question, she's going to be one of the first people that's going to know your business, that I'm going to discuss, what should I do? How should I address this? Should I address this? And what applications can then be, applied. And again, it takes me back to an older time when, the word of your auntie and your mama sisters and your older female siblings really mattered in making critical decisions about people's integrity, people's intentions, people's motivations. Let the women get a look at them and see what the visceral response is.
Yeah.
So I don't handle, women's issues and women's requests on my own. And I have a few on my desk right now. Some of you might be listening. It is Denise that makes the final decision for me.
Yeah. And it may take me 2 or 3 days before spirit tells me what should be done, how often it should be done, and even the recipe for what should be done. If I'm going to get an answer, it's within 3 to 5 days. If I'm going to get an answer on that. Yeah.
Particularly if it's medically related. I do hopefully a good job of trying to make a clear distinction when I do this show between what's real and what's Hollywood magic when it comes, to voodoo. And sometimes these requests, step into the arena of health, mental health, physical health, female health. And so again, I call on Denise and a few other, my mother, my sister, a few other women, within my private circle to sort of address those requests. I don't ignore you. I'm not putting you off, to the side. But as a professional, I've got to protect the craft, and I've got to protect our demonstration of how we operate within the tradition. So it's another reason I wanted to reintroduce Denise to you. She's agreed to be here with us a little bit more frequently. I'll let her speak for herself, but I think she's enjoying it so
I
far.
I am. Um, I I'm enjoying it because one of the reasons is because I think it's so important, especially now, that information, that certain kinds of information that speak to the spirit get out there. I think right now, coming out of 2020 with COVID, where we were all locked down and not as active, I think we're gearing up to get back to the new normal.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm happy to do this because I was so sedentary in 2020, afraid to go into my own garden and everything. And I'm getting ready to, our Sacred Stories is getting ready to go back to storytelling and telling the history and the culture and the traditions of Afro Creoles in this area. And so I have to get used to speaking to an audience again. And also, I have a big love of young people. I love young people. I love young women. I have all kind of spiritual daughters and uh, uh, young women. I think they're becoming women uh, earlier. They're sick, like my 33-year-old Melissa. They're seeking spirit earlier. Their gifts are coming sooner, and so it is my pleasure to be here to see that. It gives me hope. It gives me hope, and my young women are so powerful. They're so powerful in their own right. They know that there's a power there and they're seeking it. And I need you to continue to seek it. I need you to continue to seek your history and your culture, your healing modalities, your psychic abilities. Uh, I need it because we're going to come to a time. We're going to come to a time where we're going to need all our gifts. We're going to need all our gifts. Like Divine Prince says, hoodoo is nature, voodoo is nature. And we're going to have to get back to it, right? We can no longer rely on these false, man-made, creative ways of living. We're going to have to live closer to nature in what we eat and how we operate within the spirit and all of these things. So, Melissa, I'm not a reader. You can get your reading from Ty. If there's something about womanhood or something that is not coming spiritually clear to him, he will consult me. But like I told you, it may take spirit may speak to me 3 to 5 days later. I'll go, oh, okay, that's what she needs to do. But I love my young women. I love my men too, but I can't raise a man. It takes a man to raise a man. We can half raise men, but there's things about men that we don't know. And if we do, we won't tell. Okay? If we do truly discover what we know about men, we will never tell. But when it comes to women, I love to see my women take care of themselves and seek spirit and uh and they're doing it at a younger and younger age. We're going to need y'all to be women longer than I had to be a woman. We're going to need you to be women who stand into your own power and speak your own truth and do the rituals of healing and help other women. We're here to help each other.
Mhm.
Nobody comes here knowing everything. We grow into this life. And so I need you all to continue to do what you need to do. Do no harm. Do no harm, right? Like I told you, Beyonce's song, He's the Best Thing I Never Had. If something is not working out for you, know that you are fully, completely, absolutely, wholly, uh, totally protected by spirit. Some things you ain't supposed to have, and you'll be glad in the future when you look at it and go, oh God, thank you that you didn't give me that. Okay. So follow your path, right? And be sincere and trust your ancestors and trust the spiritual information that they downloaded in you. Trust that. Test that spirit. It'll let you know if it's for you or not. Ty, it's been my pleasure today. It's my pleasure meeting your audience as usual. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Not that I would want to add anything to what you said, but I do want to say and remind everyone, we're at war. We're at war. It's a fact. It's reality. It's not a rumor of war. It's not a gossip of war. It's not a telling. We are at war for our very lives, for our minds, for our bodies, for our future, for that of our children. And there are a lot of distractions out there, a lot of distractions out there. Distractions for your flesh, distractions for your entertainment. So let's be clear about who we are as powerful indigenous Black people, as people of color. Let's be clear about who our ancestors are and were, and what they fought through and what they survived through. Let's be clear that the voodoo that we know and understand in the New World is built in revolution, was built out of the desire for freedom and liberation, to combat white supremacy, racism, continued enslavement. And many would say that we still are fighting that battle. Many would say that we're still in that war, that things just sort of change face from generation to generation. But we're still struggling to stand up in our truth. And in spirit and religion, spirituality and religion is the one place we can stand up in our truth, regain empowerment, and move ourselves forward and fight through the fear and the dissolution and the misinformation. I'm grateful as well, Denise, for having the opportunity to speak, and I support your do no harm, but I just had to remind us that we are at war.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
are at war.
Wait a minute. I didn't say do not protect yourself.
Yeah.
Let's get the difference there. I didn't say do not protect. I said do no harm. Right? I didn't. Oh no, that's two totally different animals. I will protect myself. Right?
It's time for the real soldiers among us to stand up. It's time for the real prayer warriors among us to stand up.
That's right.
It's time for the real activists among us to activate and stand up. It's time for the real soldiers to stand up in this season, not next season. We're still referencing last season, but in this season. And in the first place, we should stand up is in spiritual houses, is in our arenas of religion, is in our centers of truth and power. So I'm grateful. I'm internally grateful. And I look forward to connecting with you all again next time at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Well, Instagram isn't working, so I'm going to do something different for Instagram. But you can always see us and view us and share us in archive on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Voodoo Thai. And of course, blogtalkradio.com/Blog Talk Radio. I'm sorry, /the-divine-prince. All is truly and indeed a blessing, Denise. Until next time, love.
Bye, Ty.